have embarked on a systemic reorientation of the US economy to boost the living standards of the American workers. The administration aims to do so by increasing economic self-reliance, supporting domestic manufacturing, reducing the trade deficit and reliance on foreign-produced goods, investing in domestic energy output, securing the border, and scaling back the federal government's role in the economy. Our consultation for 2026 focuses on the macroeconomic effects of this important shift in policies. And on that, I would like to make 4 points. First, we expect that a buoyant US economy will continue to grow strongly both this and next year. In 2025, growth reached 2.2% on a fourth quarter to fourth quarter basis. And this is close to our January 25 projection, despite significant swings in trade during the year and a sizable drag from the government shutdown in the fourth quarter. Unemployment has remained relatively low. The rate of participation in the labor force by prime-age workers has been rising, and real incomes have been increasing. And this is all good news. Undoubtedly, the story of 2025 has been the remarkable performance of US private sector entrepreneurs and workers. The level of innovation, adaptability, and resilience has been impressive. The US sits solidly at the frontier globally in terms of dynamism, know-how, and technology, and this has been most clear in the strength of labor productivity. It has helped to support growth in the United States and also to create positive spillovers to the global economy. And there is an upside risk that technology, investment inflows, and the administration's focus on reducing red tape will bear fruit, and they would support greater economic dynamism and growth. At this stage, it is difficult to quantify the potential of this impact, so we will have to continue to monitor these factors, how they impact growth in the United States carefully. So what do we expect? We expect the economy to accelerate somewhat in 2026, growing at a healthy 2.4% on a fourth quarter over fourth quarter basis, and to continue in similar pace into 2027. We also expect unemployment rate to fall somewhat to around 4%. Finally, inflation has remained around 3% throughout 2025, although services inflation has been steadily falling. Goods inflation has been somewhat affected by tariffs, but we expect that to wane and for inflation to return to the Federal Reserve's 2% target by early 2027. Given this inflation outlook, we believe it was appropriate for the Fed to cut interest rates during 25 and to return monetary policy to broadly neutral settings. Second, we see the near-term risks to activity, unemployment, and inflation as broadly balanced. The Fed has been calibrating policy well to the balance of risk between inflation pressures and slowing job growth. Under staff's baseline outlook, bringing down the federal funds rate modestly to between 3.25 and 3.5% by end 2026 will be consistent with an economy returning to full employment and inflation setting around the 2% target. A larger monetary easing than the one I described would need to be based on a material worsening in the outlook for the labor market. This is not in our baseline, but we recognize it is nonetheless a risk. Of course, what I'm telling you is just a forecast. Much could change in the coming months. We know that we operate in an environment of higher uncertainty. And as a result, the Fed will need to be attentive to incoming information and should continue to communicate their evolving views clearly to the public. Third, the continuing rise in public debt remains a concern. This is something we have been highlighting in previous Article 4s, and it is important to note that it remains a major issue to be.
Pues desde el Fondo Monetario Internacional, Georgieva, que analiza la situación económica de Estados Unidos justo después del discurso a la nación escuchado durante la madrugada de este pasado martes por el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump. Georgieva acaba de decir que Estados Unidos muestra un sólido crecimiento, baja inflación y desempleo estable. Dice que la economía mantiene las perspectivas positivas para 2026 y 2027, aunque de momento no se están acercando, pero no han llegado a ese objetivo de la Reserva Federal de la inflación, de tenerla al 2%. Dice que en 2025 la inflación se mantuvo en el 3%, afectada por los aranceles, pero que se espera que disminuya y que vuelva al objetivo del 2% de la Reserva Federal. Además, en cuanto a las perspectivas futuras, Georgieva acaba de apuntar a que se espera que la economía se acelere algo en 2026 y mantenga ese ritmo similar para 2027, pero que de momento calma. La posición actual de Estados Unidos es favorable, con posibles repercusiones positivas en la economía global. Y ha hablado también sobre la tasa de desempleo, un indicador en el que dice que se ha mantenido relativamente bajo y que se espera que baje ligeramente al 4% en los próximos años. Vamos a seguir escuchándola.
The size of US trade and current account deficit. This imbalance needs to be addressed, and doing so will benefit the US and it will benefit the global economy. We also recognize that more needs to be done to eliminate the various policy distortions in the US and in other countries that have led to these high external imbalances, and we are advocating for urgent action on that. We have been talking about it in various venues. In the US, though, tariffs have a negative supply effect, and this has added to goods inflation, as I just mentioned before, has been a headwind to ever stronger growth. We could have seen more of the good news. Over the longer horizon, the tariffs distort resource allocation, they weigh on productivity. And this is the reason why we encourage the US to work constructively with its trading partners to address these mutual concerns and agree on a coordinated reduction in distortions and trade restrictions that are adding to these global imbalances. Now, let me make a point for the record. As you have seen in the concluding statement, we have not opined on the Supreme Court decision on tariffs, and there is a reason for that. Our standard practice is to finalize the concluding statement and share it with the authorities. This has happened for the US on February 20, roughly a week before the publication today. So what you got today, the authorities got a week ago. And we could not take the implications of that decision into account. Now, this being said, we recognize these are important developments. We are digesting them. We will analyze their economic implications. We will be publishing the staff report for the United States Article 4 several weeks from now. And of course, we will be publishing a new World Economic Outlook in mid-April. So stay tuned, anticipate that there will be more on this topic at that time. So let me conclude in the following way. The US economy continues to deliver an impressive performance, and it has proven agile in adapting to shifting policies. The level of private sector-led investment and degree of dynamism and innovation have been impressive. Productivity gains have been broad-based across a number of sectors, and this good news provides an important opportunity for the administration to address the long-standing fiscal imbalance, to further support private sector dynamism through well-calibrated policies, and to work with trade partners to lessen trade distortions. So overall, a good year for the US and an opportunity to do more. Julie, back to you.
Very good. So we will now open the floor for questions. Please, when you're called, give your name and your affiliation. And if you're online, please make sure to turn on your camera and your microphone when and if called on. All right, let's open the floor. David, we'll start with you.
Hi, thank you, Madam Georgieva. David Lauder with Reuters here in Washington. You did note some concern about the current account deficit of the U.S. Now,
bueno, pues según acaba de apuntar y determinar con esas conclusiones Georgieva, dice que la economía de Estados Unidos está ofreciendo un rendimiento impresionante, que en definitiva, después de todos los datos, en general es un buen año para Estados Unidos, y que de momento sobre este fallo del Tribunal Supremo acerca de los aranceles dice que no se han manifestado ni no han opinado sobre la decisión del Tribunal Supremo, porque de momento tienen que analizar más las repercusiones, aunque dicen que todavía están digiriendo las implicaciones económicas de los aranceles. De momento, en sus palabras, dice que Estados Unidos muestra un sólido crecimiento, baja inflación y desempleo estable. Parece que el Fondo Monetario Internacional da por aprobado y pasa ese examen de la economía de Donald Trump. Dice que en cuanto a los próximos años 2026 y 2027 se espera que se acelere algo más la economía y que continúen, al menos en lo que queda de este año, con un ritmo muy similar, con la tasa de desempleo bajando ligeramente hasta el 4%. La inflación, que dice que aunque no se hace, que todavía no llega al 2% objetivo de la Reserva Federal, pero que van a intentar que llegue lo antes posible. Vamos a seguir escuchando, que está respondiendo ya las preguntas, Georgieva.
Positions of our members, and when we apply this methodology to the US, the conclusion is that the current account deficit is too big, just to make it very simple for the audience. And that is recognized by the administration. It has to be addressed. And it is something that we at the fund have been working for quite some time to analyze and provide some inputs. And actually, I'm going to ask in a second Nigel to tell you a little bit more about it. We do recognize the importance of the US to take a path to reducing the debt and deficit. I talked about that. We are now looking, so you have on one side, you have the current account deficit, which is too high. And then on the other side, you have the federal budget in deficit, and you have debt levels in the United States that have continued to grow. The US is a large economy. as I said, it has proven to be incredibly dynamic. Actually, it is the only advanced economy where we see consistently, year after year, high productivity growth that drives high growth in the country. So it is not an economy where this is a immediate pressing concern. Neither it is an immediate pressing concern to fix in year 26, in year 27. But yes, over time, our recommendation is and continues to be that significant efforts would be necessary. We talk about reducing the deficit in line with Secretary Besant's aspiration to bring it down to 3%. That would take attention to both raising revenues and managing expenditures. And since we have the luxury of Nigel sitting right next to me, and Nigel has spent how many years on?
Oh, I don't want to.
You don't want to go there. But here is the person who can give you, who can provide you with more details in response to your question.
So,
And to everybody here, voila, enjoy.
so just to pick up on what Kristalina said, so clearly the US current account deficit is too big. It's not an immediate problem that needs to be solved tomorrow. It's something that we think needs to be solved over the medium term to bring it down to more sustainable levels. And I would just draw the link between what Kristalina said on the fiscal and on the current account. One of the ways to bring the current account down is to address the fiscal problem. If they address the fiscal problem in the US fiscal savings will go down, and that automatically will help reduce the current account deficit. The other thing that could be done in the US, and I think there's some efforts to try and do this in the policy of the new administration, is to try and find ways to increase US household savings. So that could be through.
Bueno, pues según acaba de detallar, economía ágil y resiliente en Estados Unidos, que dice Georgieva que ha demostrado capacidad para poder adaptarse rápidamente a los cambios de la política económica, sobre todo en este último año. En cuanto al sector privado, ojo, porque ha subrayado que es el principal motor, el crecimiento que se está viendo impulsado sobre todo por la inversión privada, como están comentando en estos momentos, también por la innovación, por esa inversión en inteligencia artificial y por el dinamismo empresarial en Estados Unidos. Dicen que mejora, que han experimentado una mejora generalizada de la productividad, que los avances en productividad no son aislados, sino que se extienden a múltiples sectores en la economía. En cuanto a la oportunidad para poder corregir los desequilibrios fiscales, Georgieva acaba de decir que, que es el momento, en el momento actual permite abordar déficits estructurales y ajustar políticas públicas de forma más eficiente. Y ojo con la necesidad de cooperación comercial, porque sí que acaba de insistir en trabajar con socios comerciales y en reducir distorsiones y tensiones en cuanto al marco del comercio global. También ha hecho una llamada urgente a actuar. Dice que se pide una acción urgente y coordinada para poder eliminar cualquier tipo de distorsión económica en cuanto a los subsidios, a las barreras comerciales y a las políticas internas. Otro de los apuntes que ha destacado Georgieva es que Estados Unidos también tiene responsabilidad, y no solo otros países, sino que el propio Estados Unidos, lanzando de alguna manera ese mensaje a Donald Trump, debe corregir políticas internas que están contribuyendo a estos desequilibrios. Ojo, porque dice que eso ya está teniendo y repercutiendo en la inflación y en la oferta, los factores como el gasto ajustado, las restricciones en la oferta, y que están influyendo en la inflación, aunque en el crecimiento económico sigue siendo muy sólido, y que la economía de Estados Unidos, como están viendo en pantalla, ofrece un rendimiento impresionante. Nos quedamos con esas palabras, seguimos escuchándola.
Understanding what is going on in the economy, in other words, collecting data, and we at the fund do a lot to support countries in that regard. Definitely the importance of supervisory authorities to be able to do their job in a way that guarantees their effectiveness. And we know well that independent central banks perform a very important function to provide monetary policy guidance, set the interest rates at the right place, make sure that inflation is well, expectations are well anchored. So we know that, and in fact, we recently did look into developments in emerging market economies, and it was very rewarding to see how much emerging markets have moved over the last decades in setting up institutions with the right skills and right mandates to do their job. So in that sense, we do believe that it has been in the history of this country that strong institutions support growth, and in the future of this country, of course, that would continue to be the case. So we recognize. I'm actually going to ask Nigel, why did we listed those three? Let's see what's the answer. Actually, you gave me a great question to ask. I wish I had it this morning when we were doing the prep for today.
Okay, so two things. One on the Fed, we do earlier on in the statement under the monetary policy, we do recognize that it's very important that Fed's monetary policy decisions remain independent as they currently are, and very focused on maintaining their statutory framework. We chose to separate the Fed and the U.S. government as different entities. On the U.S. government, we've seen a very significant reduction in federal employment. Around 15% of the federal workforce has been lost over the past year. We want to make sure that that doesn't have an impact, as Kristalina said, on key functions like regulatory oversight, like statistics agencies. Why those agencies in particular? In part, those are our natural counterparts, as they're the main economics agencies. But I think there's also an aspect that revenue administration, statistics agencies, I think in US and elsewhere, often underfunded and very much create a very important public good that we feel should be invested in. So we just wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be a casualty of the federal downsizing.
And of course, given the role of the US dollar, the Fed is important for US businesses and households. It is also important globally. It has significance for the world economy.
Okay, let's go. We'll go to Jorgelina right here in the front.
Thank you so much, Madam Georgieva. Georgina Rosario from Bloomberg. I would like to ask about the specific part of the report that's on immigration policies. The IMF notices that there's an impact on job creation and on growth as well. I would like to ask first if you, as the IMF, has identified any specific sector that is suffering the most because of these immigration policies. And secondly, in your talks with US authorities, did you have any specific feedback on this? Because of course, this is a policy that the administration is leading. So wondering if they have reached out with a different number or a different point of view. Thank you so much.
We look at the labor market in the aggregate. So we don't have the attention to specific sectors. And when we look at the labor market on the aggregate, what we see is that demand for labor has gone somewhat down. At the same time, also supply of labor has gone down. And that, in a sense, provides for labor market stability. Unemployment is, as I said, going towards around 4%, which is a good place for this indicator. The US administration looks at immigration also both from the perspective of the economy and from the perspective of national security. And in that context, they are looking at illegal immigration as something that has relevance for national security. We look at that issue strictly from the perspective of what is the balance at the labor market. And I can tell you that this time around it's more difficult to establish that because we simply don't know when we look forward next year, the year after, whether as a result of increase in productivity, and we all recognize that artificial intelligence may have quite a lot to do with that, perhaps demand for labor would go further down, maybe in some segments of the labor market more than in others. That needs to be ascertained. And then what does it mean in terms of what is happening in supply of labor? Would that be, will we see a point when this is stabilizing at a certain level? And would there be a good match between demand for skills and availability of those skills on the labor market? And that is for us, for the next year, for the next Article 4, a question we have to get more deeply into. Nigel, you want to add something?
No, that's good.
Okay, very good. We are quickly running out of time, so I'm going to take one more question. I'll go to Abeyi here in the kind of, yep. Abeyi, can you just signal to the, yep, there you go.
Thank you for taking our question. Bayi from AFP News Agency. I just wanted to follow up on the issue of trade restrictions. You mentioned that the U.S. Should work with partners to address concerns and seek a coordinated reduction in trade restrictions. How do you assess the administration's latest move to impose new tariffs, which could go up to 15% for various partners? And in your talks with Secretary Bessent, has he seemed open to this, the IMF's call to narrowly implement, restrictions like tariffs on national security grounds moving forward? Like, how has the administration responded also to these, to these concerns? Thank you.
So when we look at the developments in trade, let me make two observations. The first one is that when tariffs were announced in April, that did create some anxiety globally and uncertainty among US trading partners. Since then, there have been agreements reached on bilateral level, and our understanding is that the intention of the administration is to keep that predictability created through agreements, bilateral agreements, to keep it active, to stay with it. While the tariffs for US partners, for some of them, have been more difficult because of high exposure to exporting the United States. For others, they have been less of an issue because of lower exposure. We can now see that from the announced...
Bueno, pues quedan pocas preguntas para Georgieva según acaban de anunciar, aunque dice, han estado hablando sobre inmigración y sobre la economía, dice que el impacto directo en empleo y crecimiento, reconocen que las políticas migratorias sí que están afectando al mercado laboral y el crecimiento económico. Sin embargo, no han destacado los sectores específicos identificados. En cuanto al análisis macro, dice que no es por sectores concretos, sino que señala más una industria especialmente afectada, que hay menos contratación también, menos demanda de mano de obra. Caen la oferta y la demanda de trabajo, menos trabajadores disponibles y menos demanda de empleo, y dice que eso genera pues una especie de equilibrio artificial en el mercado laboral, aunque según estaba destacando dice que el desempleo se mantiene en niveles sólidos alrededor del 4%, considerándolo desde el Fondo Monetario Internacional saludable. También Georgieva dice que el enfoque dual de Estados Unidos y la seguridad, dice que la administración de Donald Trump en este segundo mandato aborda la inmigración en dos ángulos distintos, uno en el impacto económico y otro en la seguridad nacional, especialmente en la inmigración ilegal que están frenando, ¿no?, por parte de Donald Trump. Por tanto, nos quedamos con que hay menos inmigración, que no ha roto el mercado laboral, al menos en los datos, pero que sí que está cambiando sus equilibrios y con implicaciones también directas sobre el crecimiento de la economía. Vamos a seguir escuchando porque está hablando de los aranceles de Donald Trump.
Around the world, a fairly strong commitment to keep trading with US in a defined manner, and also countries to trade with each other. And even more, we have seen more bilateral and plurilateral agreements as a result. My very simple message is that we have been trading as humanity for thousands of years. Trade is like water. You put an obstacle, it goes around it. And it is for a reason, because trade helps us to have globally better allocation of resources, and as a result, get better outcomes for people. So we expect to see that there would be more clarity given by the administration, and we would see in our analysis in the report a couple of weeks from now, and at the spring meetings, more to say.
Very good.
Take one more. There
All
was
right.
this gentleman here. I feel for him. He has been raising his.
All right. Igor, to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Economia News Agency. I have two questions, but let me ask.
So I like to have a question, and you want to.
Okay, anyway, I will ask two. So first of all,
Okay.
about private debt. In February, we have seen that private household debt in the US climbed to $18.8 trillion, which is a new record high. From your standpoint, are there any risks for transmitting this issue to the economic, to the economic activity, to the economic growth, etc., or it's normal in the US to see constantly growing private household debt? And the second question, the US President, Donald Trump, has already announced his plan to increase defense budget in 2027 to $1.5 trillion. From the IMF standpoint, is there any fiscal space for it right now, or the growing of US government debt is the only way forward? Thank you so much.
So to your first question, what we see in the United States in terms of the financial sector, both on the corporate front and in households, is pretty good picture. We need to remember that there are two things in the US. One is how attractive the US is for financial flows from other countries, meaning that the fuel for growth in the US is coming at a high octane. It is coming at a high level. And we don't really see concerns around households being able to serve that level, neither corporations in the US. What we need to recognize is then when you have high level of employment and you have a buoyant economy, productivity going up, that creates space for households to feel more comfortable to spend. You have a job, you earn money, you spend money. To your second question, the US is in a position to fund its spending, its government spending. We, however, do recommend that medium-term attention has to be paid to bring debt and deficit down. When you have investments from the public purse, they also generate spillover impact within the country. Going back to the people that the private debt going up, more jobs, better paying jobs, people spend more. And we need to remember that this also is good for the world as a whole, because a US that grows, has high productivity, grows rapidly, and has the ability to create more opportunities for others, has a positive spillover effect for the rest of the world. This being said, please be careful, look at the deficit and debt levels, bring them down. Nigel?
Yeah, so on the, just an annotation on the private. So you can't just look at the private debt, you have to look at the whole balance sheet of the household sector. And they have a lot of assets that have appreciated in value, both in the financial sector and in housing. That's made, if you look at their balance sheet as a whole, it looks pretty healthy. However, there are some segments that we do concern about, particularly, it's not always the case that the ones with the assets happen, the ones with the debt of the same households. So, and I would just highlight too, student debt in this country is very high, and it creates a burden, and we see it impacting macro variables like consumption, because people have that burden to service. And then for lower income households, we're starting to see some strains in their indebtedness. Not anything, I think, particularly unusual for the position in the cycle, in the economic cycle, but still there's some concerns that is becoming more difficult for that segment of the population.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Igor burned a question for next time when we get together.
All right, very good. So now I will bring the this press briefing to a close. As indicated, we will be entering now the next phase of our U.S. Article 4, which is preparing the staff report for presentation to our board, after which, of course, it will be published and made available to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you all a wonderful rest of your afternoon and evening. Thank you.
Bueno, pues según acaba de terminar ya la comparecencia ante el Fondo Monetario Internacional, Georgieva alerta sobre la incertidumbre arancelaria y dice que necesitan cooperación global para poder estabilizar el comercio en Estados Unidos. De alguna manera hace esa llamada a Donald Trump, a Estados Unidos y a la administración para poder tener esa cooperación global que dice que es clave sobre todo en los desequilibrios económicos. Y según también acababa de destacar Georgieva sobre los aranceles, dice que en Estados Unidos tienen un efecto negativo en la oferta y esto ha contribuido a la inflación de los bienes. Ha sido un viento en contra para un crecimiento cada vez más fuerte. Dice que podrían haber visto más buenas noticias, aunque en definitiva el mensaje que hemos estado viendo durante esta comparecencia, Georgieva ha relajado al mercado y bueno, pues dice que pasa el examen de la economía de Donald Trump, dice que tienen una buena situación, que la economía en Estados Unidos ofrece un rendimiento impresionante y en que en general es un buen año para Estados Unidos, según acababa de detallar Georgieva. También ha hecho referencia a el crecimiento mundial. Dice que el impacto global es positivo, hay una economía estadounidense fuerte y que genera oportunidades globales, pero sí que requieren disciplina fiscal para evitar riesgos futuros. Estados Unidos, en definitiva, que crece con fuerza y tira del mundo, pero el verdadero riesgo no está en el hoy, sino, dice, en la deuda que empiece a exigir la disciplina ya a largo plazo en cuanto al futuro. La economía dice de Georgieva que el crecimiento está en niveles muy elevados, una economía muy fuerte. De momento subraya que no hay señales de preocupación ni en los hogares ni en las empresas, que no hay estrés financiero inmediato y que, bueno, en cuanto al empleo y a la productividad es el círculo más claro del consumo, ¿no? Más empleo, mejores salarios, mayor consumo y mayor crecimiento. Que por tanto, en cuanto al gasto público, dice que bueno, Estados Unidos puede sostener su gasto público por ahora y que el país tiene capacidad para financiar su gasto, pero que el Fondo Monetario Internacional advierte sobre el déficit y la deuda a medio plazo, sobre todo. Por último, en cuanto a los aranceles, según estábamos comentando, la idea, bueno, pues de la incertidumbre arancelaria a la diplomacia bilateral, ¿no? Dice que Estados Unidos intenta ahora estabilizar el tablero comercial global sin tener que renunciar a esa estrategia, ese fallo por el Tribunal Supremo de los aranceles. Pues así nos despedimos por hoy con este último mensaje, justo después de que escucháramos ayer el discurso a la nación por parte del presidente de Estados Unidos. Economía que va viento en popa, según acaba de destacar Georgieva del Fondo Monetario Internacional, y también lo decía ayer el presidente de Estados Unidos. No muchas preocupaciones, sobre todo a una economía en la que bueno, pues está cambiando hacia este nuevo orden mundial. Así nos despedimos por hoy, que pasen muy buena noche, arrancamos mañana con más información a partir de las 7 de la mañana. Buenas noches y buen negocio.
Está con nosotros Lorenzo Ramírez. Lorenzo, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos días.
Buenos días, José Antonio, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Bueno, esa es la gran clave, que la inteligencia artificial hoy en día no es rentable. La actuación de China en este episodio de la guerra comercial.
Muchísimas gracias, Lorenzo, como siempre, por toda esa fotografía hoy abundante, porque está en la actualidad que no para. Buen día, buen negocio.
A ti también, buen día y nada, a disfrutar y a trabajar. Abrazo.
Europa, pues Europa lo que hemos dicho siempre, es decir, es un continente con los mismos vicios que los franceses atemperados. Ya. Exceso de regulaciones, exceso de gasto público, exceso de impuestos, exceso de burocracia y además, en el caso de Europa, con un paraguas nefasto que es la Comisión Europea, que se ha convertido en un agente del estatismo y de las políticas woke económicas también.
Ya.
Entonces, Europa es el bajo imperio romano. Ha perdido el dinamismo, no tiene capacidad ni impulso para hacer las reformas necesarias para recuperar la prosperidad y está rodeado de bárbaros.
Claro.
¿Quién manda? Estados Unidos. El primer golpe en el mentón estaba claro. ¡Pum! ¡Pum! Al mundo. Vamos a ello. La fotografía alrededor de Venezuela queda clara con una cuestión fundamental a estas horas. ¿Hay alguien dentro que le valga? ¿Qué pasa en las bolsas? Que todo sube. Las bolsas cotizan en función de Donald Trump. Esto es Estados Unidos. Callaros todos los demás. ¿Qué es lo que plantea Donald Trump después de lo que ha hecho? En el fondo, la fotografía del terror. ¿Quién está detrás de todo esto? Marco Rubio. Cuando te advierta Trump, ponte a temblar. Hemos pasado de un mundo dividido para tres a que solo uno es el amo del mundo.
La propia sociedad israelí es bastante más heterogénea de lo que nosotros pensamos. Nosotros yo creo que a veces tendemos a pensar que un israelí es un judío y no, realmente empiezas a escarbar y ves que es mucho más heterogéneo de lo que nosotros podemos pensar.
Dice el español, Merz afirma que Alemania ya no puede sostener el estado de bienestar y pasará la tijera al sistema de pensiones. Acaban de abrir la caja de Pandora. El lío es espectacular.